Golden Girls Podcast with friends. Got Tony and Corey Fineran. Danny Rockett's here with the Magnificent Beth Brown. We're gonna eat some cheesecake. We'll reminisce about the 80s too. Talk TV about Rosemont, Blanche, and Dorothy. Glad you're here with us today. Golden Girls Podcast with friends.
How's everybody doing? If you're watching the video, I would love for you to comment, like it first, but also comment below and tell me where you're watching this from. I'd really appreciate that in particular. So this is going to be an experiment. It would be interesting for me to edit this thing after the fact and turn it into the pure audio. So we'll see how it goes. I'm excited to try it out with you, though.
Yeah, I know I ain't seen it all, but I've seen enough. Yeah, I know I ain't seen it all, but I've seen enough.
Welcome to Always Listening. I'm your host, Joel Sharpton, the Chief Editing Officer for Pro Podcasting Services, and I am always listening. I've been listening to the podcasters that we're going to talk about today for 5 years now, I guess, actually. Really, at least, well, it wasn't the very beginning of my own podcasting, but shortly after I started podcasting for myself, I started listening to these podcasters and some of their shows. Not religiously. I don't listen to any of them except the one that I'm going to talk about today on an every episode basis. And that's why I was so excited when they finally made a show that I felt like was for me. We're talking about Let Them Eat Cheesecake, a Golden Girls podcast. And the colon is very important for anybody who has listened to the show. There was a large debate over exactly what to name the show. You know, it's interesting. Podcasters don't necessarily think about this in the beginning, and podcast listeners don't almost ever think about it, I think. But the name of a podcast is incredibly important, not only for branding purposes, but for SEO, right? Search engine optimization. In podcasting, the biggest search engine that we worry about is Apple Podcasts and their directory, the iTunes directory. So if you want to be found, you need to have whatever the main topic that you're going to talk about right there in the title. So if you're going to make a show like Let Them Eat Cheesecake, which is obviously about the Golden Girls TV show, then you need to have Golden Girls there in the name, or else no one is ever going to find you if they don't know who you are to begin with. The question is, do you put a colon? Do you put a dash? Do you say it out loud? Just because you have the colon in there, do you have to say it when you announce the name of the show? And Corey and Tony Fineran, two of the hosts of this show, very adamantly disagreed, but I think the audience has won out, and Corey's decision to announce the colon is definitely going to stay. So how do I know these people? Well, Corey and Tony Fineran are a married couple. Corey is a podcaster who is the host of, or one of the hosts of, the Ivy Envy podcast about the Chicago Cubs. Now, my co-host, or former co-host for this show, Josh, he's been listening to Ivy Envy basically as long as he's been listening to podcasts. When we first started this show, Always Listening, we actually called it Pod on Pod back in the day. We reviewed Ivy Envy. As a matter of fact, I looked it up. We've actually talked about Ivy Envy twice on this show. Once was in May of 2014, and once was in September of 2015. In May of 2014, we covered it as Pod on Pod. It was one of our first 3 reviews, I think. And the idea when we launched the show, we said, if we're going to review podcasts, we need to review all the different kinds of podcasts, right? So we need a sports show. I didn't have one at the time that I particularly loved, at least not an independent show. I listened to ESPN's Fantasy Focus Football with Pod Vader and Matthew Berry and Nate Ravitz, but I didn't feel like we needed to plug that one in the first little batch of our shows. So Ivy Envy was it. And we reviewed it, even though I don't like baseball and I didn't like the Cubs, or I don't care about the Cubs one way or the other. But I loved these guys. The whole crew was really good, but Corey in particular, I had an affinity for, and we got to know each other online. Turned out we had a lot in common. He was working in the education system at the time, and since then he's gone independent and works for himself, runs his own business. And of course, that's what I'm doing as well. We got to know each other as podcasters, got to be friends, and eventually we ended up staying together. Corey and Tawny, myself, Josh's wife Rachel, my wife Kelly, and another friend of Corey and Tawny's, Nick Suberling, who is not on this podcast, but also stayed with us at Podcast Movement in Fort Worth. That was 3 years ago, I guess now. We shared an Airbnb there. It was a great experience. We really got to know each other and had a blast. We also reviewed Tawny's show, Mommy's Cocktail Hour. And that show is, you can listen to that review. It was originally released as Pod on Pod on Mommy's Cocktail Hour. That was September 24th, 2014. You can go look that one up in the archives. Mommy's Cocktail Hour is sort of semi-retired like we are in a lot of ways. I don't think they post very regularly at all anymore, the podcast itself. Ivy Envy's still going strong. As a matter of fact, I think they're entering their 10th season now. And of course, they've now recently got a World Series in their pocket too, for the Cubs. So that's what's happening over there. Why are they now doing a show about the Golden Girls, and who else is with them? Beth Brown, they call her the Magnificent Beth Brown. She is another member of the Mommy's Cocktail Hour crew, and she's a co-host of Let Them Eat Cheesecake. And then the fourth member of the team is Danny Rockett. Now, Danny Rockett has his own podcast, funny enough, also about the Chicago Cubs. It's a very different take on the sports genre, though. It's called the Son Ranto Show, or the Son Ranto Show, I should say, which is an inside joke about Ron Santo, I believe. Anyway, you can check that out at sunranto.com. You can check out Mommy's Cocktail Hour if you want to look it up. They're on Facebook. Just search for Mommy's Cocktail Hour. They're also on Twitter, of course. And Ivy Envy, you can go to ivyenvy.com to check that out. For Let Them Eat Cheesecake, actually the best way to keep up with them, and you can search for the show in Apple Podcasts or Stitcher Radio or basically any good podcast app, but the best way to find them would be to go to Facebook and search for their group. It's called Cheesecake Chat. That's the best way to interact. They're also on Twitter, though, at TweetCheesePod. I think lots of different variations of Let Them Eat Cheesecake were already taken for different reasons. So let's get into what this show is about and why these four people who all have better shows to do, perhaps, or at least more potentially lucrative shows, why did they start doing this one together? I told you that I've been friends with Corey and Tawny specifically for a while, and Corey and I are actually in a Slack group together where we share ideas and spitball back and forth about the podcasting world. And one of the things that came up recently is that he has lost a little bit of the fire for podcasting about the Cubs. In particular, his show, they do 2 episodes, I think, a week during the off season. They try to do live episodes after games a lot during the regular season. For the postseason, they do a live show after every single game. And you know, those games sometimes go very late into the evening. So this can be an exhausting undertaking. His show's been going on for 10 years. And yes, they do collect Patreon money and it's pretty lucrative. They do some ad sales too. But again, this is not his full-time job. He's got another enterprise. So what keeps you running when you have that much work to do, that much effort to put into something? But the passion has started to dwindle, to wane. Well, that was his question. And it turned out for him, funny enough, that the passion came back about the Golden Girls. So the 3 of them, cut Danny out of this for a minute, but Beth and Corey and Tawny were talking at a party one night about how much they enjoyed the Golden Girls and how they all had these fond memories of watching it when they were younger. And then Corey started a rewatch when it came on, not Hulu, that's where it is now, but I think he was watching it on Netflix at the time, or maybe just on cable. He and Tawny started watching every night. He said, I'm going to watch them all again. He watched a few, and then somewhere in there, the idea for this show came about. It ended up taking several months for them to get it up and running. They waited until the off season of baseball until they decided to launch it. But now that it's up and going, I think they're going to continue it. That's the plan, at least, even through the baseball season. So the way that they come about this is they come at the episode and they don't recount every single moment that happens. This is not, you listen to some rewatch podcasts and They really break down every moment to moment in the episode. And I think there's benefit to that because some people watched it years ago. They're not going to go back and rewatch it, but they want to enjoy the conversation with you. And so recapping what happened for them and really making sure that everybody is on board with the same experience, that's helpful. And I can see why people might want to do that. I can see why some podcasts do that, but that's not what this show does. They do, however, hit the highlights, and they also have a great idea, in my opinion, for breaking the show down into segments. They talk about the side piece. For instance, Tawny highlights the side piece of the episode. Generally, that's one of the main characters' love interest for that episode, the new boyfriend or something. Sometimes it's a sibling or a child that we haven't seen before in the show, but that comes in for this episode. And the cool thing is that they don't just talk about that character, but Tawny brings in some info about that actor or actress, and you find out maybe some other things that you might have seen them in, or why they were famous at the time, or why it might have been special that they were in that episode, or why that actor might have been chosen, or what happened to him afterwards. They're already in the handful of episodes. I think they've gone through about 12 or 13 so far. In the handful of episodes, there's been several stories where, for instance, Stan, the ex-husband, Dorothy's ex-husband, Stan's new wife, she is now like a real estate agent, I think, and fairly, prominent online in her new business. So there's always interesting factoids, I feel like, that come out of that segment. Corey highlights the, I think it's called Beyond the Banana Leaf, where they focus on an 80s reference. Sometimes that's about music. Sometimes it's about an actor. Sometimes it's about a pop culture reference that took place in the episode. Maybe you'll offhandedly mention some game show host or something. And so Corey will kind of fill you in on that and bring you up to speed. The thing that occurs to me is that this show means a lot to me because I did watch it as a young person. I think it holds up. The comedy is really, really good. I'm talking about Golden Girls now specifically. And because of that, it's the kind of show that I find very likely that I'm going to want to show my children someday. It occurs to me that I watched it too young, maybe. A lot of the comedy went over my head. A lot of the storylines went over my head. But when my kids are in their teenage years, I think this is definitely a show that we're going to watch together. And a lot of the topics that otherwise would be hard for me to give them context for, this podcast, Let Them Eat Cheesecake, is actually going to make that really easy because the four of them come together and can give you a broad, overview and assessment of this idea and break it down, make you understand why it meant so much to us at the time or why it meant so much to the writers or the production crew at the time. Really, really worthwhile if you, like me, think that The Golden Girls is not just a TV show, but, like a cultural artifact. So, is it good? Is the podcast good? It's so good. First of all, the four of these characters have a lot of broadcast experience together and separately. They know how to present themselves on mic. They know how to move a topic along. They know how to structure a show, and they know how to keep things interesting. Also, they're all very, very funny. And in particular, I'm going to highlight Danny Rockett here. The one that I probably, out of the four of them, I guess I know him the least maybe, but Danny is in his day job. One of the things that he does, one of the many things that he does, is he writes jingles. And he's a musician, and he often does parody stuff on his own and just for fun. And one of the things that he's done for this show is construct a complete theme and intro and outro segments, and there's interstitial music that comes and everything, and most of it is his voice. He sort of hums the variations on the Golden Girls themes. I'm going to play a clip of that right here, actually. For
So today we're going to delve into season 1, episode 12, The Custody Battle.
Podcasters who are watching this live stream, by the way, anytime you're recording and you know you want to make an edit after the fact, that's a little tip for you. Snap your fingers 3 times. You can see it in the waveform as you go by. You can edit it up and splice in something pretty easily. But I love Danny's music. He sings the theme song a cappella, and he uses all of those little interstitial pieces that you hear in the Golden Girls. He uses those in the podcast. It's really brilliant. And then the theme song for the show itself, which I find myself singing now when I watch the Golden Girls, I sing the Let Them Eat Cheesecake theme song. It is Corey and Tawny and Beth and Danny. It's their own voices singing, again, rewritten words from the Golden Girls theme. Of course, the Thank You for Being a Friend is the very well-known hit song that was the theme song for the Golden Girls. Danny's rewritten it, and it's Golden Girls podcast with friends. Da, da, da. I have a cold, or I would totally sing it. Don't even question it. But it is amazing. It's amazing. And I sing it all the time now, honestly, when I'm watching Golden Girls on Hulu, which, by the way, no endorsement here, but Golden Girls is on Hulu. So if you find any interest in this and you want to dive in, then I would strongly recommend going and checking out. Sign up. I think you could get 30 days easily for free, and a lot of times you can find like a 45-day trial on Hulu. You could watch a heck of a lot of Golden Girls if you wanted to for free before you actually have to pony up for it. But it's well worth it. I'm loving going back and watching these episodes. All right, let's talk about the audio quality a little bit. I think you guys know that the content is there, and the host likability. Of course, I'm in love with these guys because I know most of them personally, but even if you don't, I think you're going to fall in love with them. You're going to fall right into the community, especially if you get active with them on social. The audio quality is decent, obviously, because all of them are podcasters and they know how to put together a show. I will say this, because you have 4 people, 3 separate locations. Corey and Tawny are recording together. Danny's in his own studio and Beth is in her own home. And they don't live near to each other. I'm not sure how they're syncing it all together. I'm pretty sure that they're doing basically no editing other than putting in the theme music, and that may even be with a soundboard type deal, so it's all kind of live to tape. But there are occasionally moments in the show where I think to myself, boy, and maybe it's just because I'm a podcast editor, I wish they'd send that through a polish. Little moments where they're hanging up on a transition or moving from one segment to another that I just wish. I think every show could benefit from, a rinse and wash. That's just me. That's the editor in me. And look, my point on that is this. The one thing that we have as podcasters over traditional radio, we don't have the budgets. We don't have the studios. Obviously, if you're watching this live stream, you're seeing my my audio closet. But we do have the ability to edit. We do have the ability to polish because we're an on-demand medium. We all have deadlines to meet, yes, but there's no clock to hit. We're not live, except for right now when I'm live streaming. So that is my one quibble as far as the audio content, the audio quality goes. I wish that they would send it through and do a little bit more editing and tighten up some of those little mistakes in between transitions and things like that, because they are so polished and professional in so many ways throughout. Their jokes are tight. Their chemistry is good. They keep things rolling along. So those little moments stand out that much more because they are really good podcasters, broadcasters in the first place. So why did I want to feature this show in this week, in this episode? All of these people have another podcast that had a larger audience, at least for now. Who knows how large this could get, but they're not the only Golden Girls podcast out there. They're definitely not the Golden Girls podcast with the biggest celebrities behind it or the largest audiences, before the Golden Girls project. I would imagine there's several comedians, I think, that do Golden Girls podcasts even. I know I've listened to a few different shows in the past about Golden Girls. Why do this show then? If the goal is to have a big fancy show with a huge audience that you can lean into the community of, that you can potentially monetize, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Why do it? Why do it at all? First of all, I don't think that is always the goal. Sometimes you just do it for the love. These folks enjoy talking to each other. They enjoy building a community, and it turns out they enjoy watching the Golden Girls too. All of them do. Why not make the Golden Girls appointment television for yourself once again by having a community that's counting on you showing up and talking about it? I haven't talked to Corey or Tawny about this specifically. I don't know that this was their thinking. I don't know that Danny thought, I need the pressure of the Cheesecake audience pushing me to watch the Golden Girls every week. But the idea that you do make it part of your schedule by making a podcast out of it, it makes sure that you're going to keep it up, or at least it makes it much more likely. Because now you've got this little group, that, and here's the thing, theirs has already turned into an in-person reaction too. A lot of their audience showed up recently for a big convention, hangout, whatever, in Chicago about the Cubs, and they threw a side party connected to that was all about the Let Them Eat Cheesecake and the Golden Girls. They had some gifts along those lines, the whole 9 yards. It was wonderful. So if you have a podcast that is your bread and butter, maybe it's a part of your business, maybe it's earning you revenue through Patreon supporters or ad sponsors or whatever, and your passion has begun to wane for that, think about where your passion lies today and see if there's a way that you can lean into that, as these guys did with Let Them Eat Cheesecake, and light the fires back up. Ivy Envy's not going anywhere. San Ranto isn't going away. Mommy's Cocktail Hour, I don't think, is necessarily back in for a relaunch or a rebirth. But you never know, because Beth and Tawny are spending time together. The other members of that crew are gonna be jealous that they're not hanging out with them too. So I think it's entirely possible that something could spin out of that as well. My point is, don't be scared to chase your passion just because nothing might come of it. Everything could come of it. So that's my take on Let Them Eat Cheesecake. You can find it, as I said, by searching Let Them Eat Cheesecake in any of the podcast apps. They don't really have a website. They're on Libsyn only, so you can go to letthemeatcheesecake.libsyn.com if you want to play the episodes right there. But that's the deal, folks. You got to go and check them out, in my opinion, because if you like the Golden Girls at all, I think you're going to love this show. The real thing that you need to do, though, is go to Facebook and search for Let Them Eat Cheesecake. No, it's called Cheesecake Chat, right? Let me search for it here for you. And I'm going to have a link in the show notes as well. Cheesecake Chat. Yeah, I'm copying that link right now. All right. If you have questions about podcasting, if you have questions about, anything, really, about podcasting, about Let Them Eat Cheesecake, about always listening, about things that you can do to improve or grow your show, I'd love to answer those for you. All you got to do is drop a comment in the comments below, or you can email me, joel@propodcastingservices.com, or you can just go by the website, propodcastingservices.com, anytime, and check out our old reviews, check out our services, our courses, and our blog. There's a blog there too. There's actually a couple of blogs there. Everything I've written since like 2005 is all online there at propodcastingservices.com now. All right. Thanks for watching this. Any of you that did, this is an experiment. If you like it, let me know in the comments in the replay for this, and I'll try to do more of it. If this isn't really what you're looking for in a live video, let me know that too, and we'll try to figure out something differently. For the podcast audience, you can tune in live. I'm at least going to do this again next week with our Gamertag Radio documentary review. Josh is going to be in studio with me. That might be a little bit more exciting having two faces in here to look at. He and I are going to be talking about Gamertag Radio, and I got to tell you, I loved the documentary. It's going to go live on Twitch this Sunday. If you've never used Twitch before, it's the video gaming streaming service. It's basically YouTube for video gamers. And it's kind of a first of its kind event. It's going to be on the main page of Twitch, which is sort of unprecedented. And it's going to be there live this Sunday night, the 25th of February. So next week, Josh and I are going to talk about it. We've both seen pre-release copies. I really enjoyed it. I'm going to go ahead and give you that spoiler. I think it's got a great story about, Danny, Pena, Pete, and Paris, and how, they've grown their community over the years and really accelerated that growth recently. And then Josh, he didn't go into details, but the hint that he gave me was that he did not care for it. So we shall see. Join us next week. There will be an event posted. If you go to Pro Podcasting Services on Facebook, you can join the event, see when we're going to go live, and come be in the room. If you got comments, we'll take those questions. And again, Josh will be here to answer for himself. All right, folks, until next time, until next episode, I've been Joel Sharpton, Chief Editing Officer for Pro Podcasting Services, and we have been always listening.
Yeah, I know I ain't seen it all, but I've seen enough. Yeah, I know I ain't seen it all, but I've seen enough.
Always Listening is a proud member of the Two Guys and a Rogue network. You can find all our reviews by searching Always Listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, or Google Play Music app. Also, you can find us anytime at alwayslisteningpod.com. Our theme song is Enough by Bethany Rayburn.
When that day comes and I stop breathing, will you bury me with my love? Will you bury me with my love? 'Cause if I never thought twice about dying, then this ain't no life at all. Honey, it ain't no life at all. Yeah, I know I ain't seen it all, but I've seen enough. Yeah, I know I ain't seen it all, but I've seen enough. Yeah, I know I ain't seen it all, but I've seen enough. Yeah, I know I ain't seen it all, but I've had enough.
Two Guys and a Rogue.
I'm one guy,
I'm the other.
and this is the network.